Eric Branch, who tweeted the video of Trey Lance to Danny Gray. We are watching the video now on the YouTube. And as you pointed out to me, and as Eric pointed out, this is on Patrick Peterson, who on one hand, legit NFL pro. On the other hand, maybe a bad matchup because he's not very fast. But this is also not during, this is not during 11 on 11. That should be noted.
Well, I also think we need to note at this point in time, even though for, when you say old, you say, 40, but, Patrick Peterson's probably 32, but he's well past. Yeah, he's 32 years old, just turned 32. I mean, his career has been holding on for dear life for like 2 years now, partly because he can't really run anymore. And he was a guy, remember early on in his career, like punt returner, elite athlete. He just kind of goes. And Danny Gray, here's what we know immediately. Danny Gray can fly in a straight line. Like we saw that in the game. We see that right here. You and I, we've seen these at these practices. Like he has a skill. Like Ayuk can push the field, but Ayuk, if he becomes a star, which he has become in training camp, now will it translate to be an 80, 90 catch guy? I think a lot of people are bullish on it, but that's why you play the games. He's going to do a lot of his work, in my opinion, from like 10 to 20, running deep outs, deep ins, and then make shit happen. Not that he won't hit some deep balls. It's naturally comes. I mean, Devontae Adams not as fast as Ayuk, and he hits deep balls. Like, it's part of being a great receiver. To me, Danny Gray is a deep threat. Like, that is his number one characteristic that's getting him to play immediately. They often say in, like, sports, and I think it's like this in probably any industry when you're young, like, find a little niche and then take off from there. Like, it's definitely in football or basketball or baseball when you're a young player and not the number one pick. Like, you got to find something you do really well, and that can stand out to the coaching staff in the front office, and that'll get you in the mix. And clearly,
especially on a good team, right?
Especially on a good
lot
team,
of opportunity.
It's hard to crack. And he has a skill that other guys on his own team, like he has elite 4.33 speed, and he clearly plays like that. And I used to say this, like when the Niners, we nitpick like the 19 team. Well, they got an undrafted free agent starting Emmanuel Mosley. Even if you look back on like LOB's defense, like the corner opposite Richard Sherman was never as good as Richard Sherman. Now, the 3 of the 4 DBs were Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, and Richard, but every team has a flaw. Most of the teams you're going to play in the NFL don't have multiple Jalen Ramseys. So, like, if Danny Gray's in the game against the Rams, let's just say it's a 3 wide receiver set. Well, Jalen's going to 11 or 19 for sure, right? 100% he's going to one of those 2 guys. That means by the time you get to their third corner, Danny Gray, if he's on the opposite side, it's just usually getting your third corner. Most teams do not have multiple Deion Sanders. So, hell, most teams don't really, it feels like there's like 6 or 7 pretty good corners that we all kind of agree. And then there's just like a bunch of average guys that are kind of hit or miss. And that to me is where when you're loaded at wide receiver, and coaches and teams have talked about this, they're just way more wide receivers the last 5 years consistently coming into the league than corners. It's why, like when we talk college football, it's why Washington and Utah have gotten a lot of praise over like the last decade. They've produced a lot of DBs. It's pretty rare to have multiple NFL DBs on like Alabama or Ohio State. Like, it's really kind of been a point of differentiation for those 2 programs. It's like fucking Washington and Pete's heyday had like 3 NFL guys. It's like, damn, didn't Washington have 2 guys last year, 2 corners? So, and one went in the first round. Most NFL teams have like 1 corner they're like trying to get rid of. That's why I think Richard Sherman, someone DM'd me the other day, like, why do you think Richard is claiming the Niners are going to be the best defensive backfield in the league? I said, well, one, he's biased. Like, these are his guys. He clearly likes Jimmy Ward. Emmanuel Mosley, I think, was probably like a guy that he took under his wing. He's high on Ward, so he's biased there. But I think he also just looks like they got 3 legitimate pros, and Hufanga, like, that's better than the majority of teams. So that's where the Niners, with Danny Gray specifically, and Trey throwing bombs, where, like, ultimately last year they couldn't. I mean, they had to hit crazy slants and ins, and luckily they had the Yak Bros and really Debo Bro. But that's harder to sustain than just like, you'd like to have a deep passing game element to your offense.
Yeah. Well, and a fast guy, I mean, this is kind of stating the obvious, but a fast guy increases the likelihood that the pass is completed because a fast guy might be more open than a guy that's not as fast. And we've seen him now open multiple times. In fact, there was a second angle of this throw that makes it look like he has to throw down for the ball, slow down for the ball from Trey. So now the good news is that, Trey's got enough arm, but he has been open. I think it's interesting that he's been so open now, the two big throws we saw the other day in the game, and then this one against Patrick Peterson. These are not tight window deep balls that Trey Lance has to drop in the bucket for Danny Gray. And look, Danny,
he's gonna get, like, in some games it's gonna be hard, guys open. There are gonna be half the teams in the league where you're gonna be able to scheme some guys deep, specifically him, against a slower corner. As the season goes on, guys get hurt. You're having like practice squad guys come up.
Yeah,
it's part of foot. By the Utah played the Rose Bowl with the running back. Like, it's just the nature of look at the Niners.
Yeah. Well, when you say like, oh, he burned Patrick Peterson, it's a bad matchup. Well, he's one of their starting corners. Like, there are bad matchups, right? Especially when ideally, eventually, you're an every down receiver. But when you're not, now you're a little bit more of a chess piece because you can get inserted in spots where you're going to get a good matchup. That's kind of the point, is we're going to find you an advantageous matchup. That's the point.
It's crazy looking at his combine pre-draft. Is he, they got him a 4.33. Usually when a guy's like that explosive of runner, his vert, is like 36, 37, 38. His vert was only 34. That number doesn't feel like he made a couple jumping plays. Maybe just had a bad jump that day, because his broad jump's 10.6, which is pretty good. But when I think, explosive guys, like, I bet, Tyreek Hill's vert's probably 38. Usually you're just kind of a freak.
Yeah. Sir Elderly on the stream, how many attempts has Trey made to Gray? Chemistry will continue like all other offensive skill players. Also, slot fade, deep overs will be great matchups for Gray against nickels and safeties. I don't know how many he's made. I do know all the practices we've been to, it looks to me like Trey Lance is comfortable throwing the ball to Danny Gray. Now, sometimes, they don't complete the ball, like the preseason game on that ball that was out of bounds. But I do think he's comfortable throwing the ball. Like, I think he's confident in him. And we've seen him catch the ball. Like, he's done. One of the questions was hands. He's caught a lot of ball. He has caught the ball when I've watched him. So,
you know what Brandon Ayuk's vertical jump was?
It was very good.
40.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I looked at it a couple weeks ago, just when I was looking at his arm length, which is also extremely good. So
30. Yeah, he's got. I mean, there are NFL linemen that have shorter arms.
Brandon Ayuk, like, this idea that Brandon is some like, this is the year. This guy, I got to tell you, this guy Brandon Ayuk, man, people aren't talking about the first rounder who was fast, who's got long arms, and who can jump. They're not talking about that guy.
Well, let's say this. Remember, didn't he have a hamstring issue at the end of the season, and it kind of let in, and he ran a slower 40. It was like in the 4.5s, 4.50. What if Brandon Ayuk was healthy and running like when we see him and ran a 4.40 with all those? He was picked 25. And does he go pick 17?
Well, tough, right? Because that was such a loaded first round of receivers.
And he was, he was a JC transfer, had a little less. So maybe he goes, 20 to 25. But last time I checked, going 25 is not like you're some scrub. It's like, I got passed up by 24 guys in a draft full of 250. What the fuck are we talking about?
Well, you draft guys at 25 that you think could be stars.
TJ Watt. I think TJ Watt's like pick 26. How's he doing?
Jake on the stream asked, they would do backflips if Danny Gray had a rookie season like McCole Hardman. 2019
off the field today.
McCole Hardman got carted off the field,
or today? He it didn't look good.
Thanks. Well, I'll read you his stats from his rookie year anyway.
Well, I think he maybe came up limping. I don't know, something. It didn't look good. Left knee. I didn't see the clip. I just saw, like, doesn't look good.
Championship team, 2019, his rookie year, 26 catches, 538 yards, 6 touchdowns, 4 rushing attempts.
I think he returns too.
Lost 2 fumbles.
I think the Niners would take that right now for sure. Feels like Haberman. Hard for me to tell. I mean, I was kind of wiggly. He could kind of make guys miss, and he was flying.
Yeah,
I feel like when I close my eyes and I see Haberman, it was like, is this guy? I think everyone agreed when he first showed up. It was like, does Andy Reid just have 7 guys that run 4.0 40s? Remember, like 3 of them just flying down the field, and he was one of them.
Yeah.
The difference is Danny is going to not look like anyone else on his team, right? The Chiefs, just every guy was going deep.
Right. There are things that he can do that there's only one person in the play. He's the number one guy that route is designed for.
Yeah.
Groin injury for Hardman.
Okay. So that's good. I wonder, the one thing the Chiefs do with their speed demons, right? The Niners do this with Debo, who turns into like the Incredible Hulk, but the Chiefs do a lot of hand the ball off or do the little pitch things to get them running, basically on end arounds or through. It'll be interesting. Like, does Danny Gray have that in the bag? Because if he does, that adds a huge element, doesn't it? Like if you can bring him around like a double reverse or something, just get him flying.